As you've just heard, my role is as the Superintendent of Greater Manchester Police with specific responsibility for Manchester City Centre. It's a challenging area to police, but a very rewarding one to police. And what I want to talk through today is actually how we are currently policing the city centre in very, very close partnership with Manchester City Council. In many people's eyes, perhaps policing has been an emergency service of last resort. It's the place people go to when there's a crisis in their lives and need to dial 999. I think interestingly, a lot of our call takers would suggest we've become pretty much a service of first resort with some of the calls they take in terms of how to turn the water off, what time's the restaurant open and I can't get a cab tonight. So the reality is that either way, the policing role is a very, very wide one, and something a wide one in terms of supporting the public. Current role portfolio would include the reduction in crime, the tackling of antisocial behaviour, the protection of vulnerable people, dealing with civil emergencies and tackling counter-terrorism. And all of that is underpinned behind a strong effort to build the trust of the public in the service. We can only do that through being accessible, responsive and ensuring that the delivery of the police service is kept entirely proportionate. It would be very naive to think that GMP can actually achieve all of those things in isolation in this day and age. The reality is that in Manchester City Centre we work with a wide range of public and private sector agencies to deliver a safer city centre. Many people might say, so what, the cops have worked in partnerships for a number of years now. And that's true. Crime and disorder reduction partnerships have been at the heart of the partnership working for several years, supported by legislation that requires agencies to work together. And the benefits of partnership working have been increasingly found across the service. What I want to do this morning, though, is talk about what we've termed Partnership Plus within Manchester City Centre. We've actually taken the existing partnership arrangements and taken it to a whole new level in order to make Manchester City Centre a safer place. Manchester as a city. Well, it's a great city. I think most people in the room are Manchester based. Certainly the panel are very proud of Manchester. It's had city status since 1853. Truly great place. And just to provide some context around why we're so proud of it, this is the city where Rolls first met Royce, just down the corner in the Midland Hotel. This is the city where the atom was first split and where the first basic computer was designed and built. This is the city that's been home to over 20 Nobel Prize winners. And it's the city with the oldest public library in the English-speaking world. Now, colleagues in Birmingham might dispute our claim to be the second city, but the reality is that Manchester is actually the most visited English city outside London. And of Manchester's 500,000 population, we now have over 15,000 households in the city centre alone. That's a really significant change from the position of just 5 or 10 years ago. And particularly notable is that the housing stock is at capacity. Now, residents here tell us half a story about a particular area. Most visitors to this city come from further afield than Manchester and indeed come from across the country. Chief Superintendent O'Hare is going to talk shortly about how we manage major events that take place in a city of this size. But at a local level, this city centre saw close to 350 events in the last 6 months. They vary in scale and demand, but many actually need us to mobilise resources from across the force area to provide support for our great city centre. Some of the events here include major demonstrations and parades. We see arena concerts at the MEN, we support stadium concerts, we have major political party conferences, and we also have national exhibitions. We also have the impact of football crowds on the city centre. We effectively host the crowds that come to the biggest and most successful team in Premiership history, that brings supporters in from across Europe, and we host them in the city. But there's also a much smaller, far less successful team in east of Manchester that brings in relatively big crowds as well. Daytime visitors in this city centre, as many will know in the audience, we can get up to 100,000 people visiting just in the daytime. And when you couple that to between 50 and 100,000 just coming for the nighttime economy on Friday and Saturday night, these are really significant numbers that are literally passing through. Of particular note as well, certainly for reasons we're going to go through in a few minutes, are that we get about 50,000 cars a day visiting our car parks in the city. That's 50,000 motorists coming in and leaving their car effectively in our care. This is a vibrant, successful city centre. It's one to be proud of, and whilst GMP is keen to see the city's status continue to thrive, the volume of people here does offer us a challenge in terms of supporting it and public safety, reducing crime and reducing antisocial behaviour. It's a real challenge to keep the city a safe place. And it's that challenge that we're working closely on partners with. The challenge is to deliver our core business more efficiently with Manchester City Council for the benefit of a safer Manchester City Centre. This is very much about managing the risk together. You know, as I've said, many police basic command units or divisions, or whatever language you want to use, have worked with their partners for some time. Often that involves small numbers of staff. Relationships are often maintained, if we're honest, on a pick-up-the-phone arrangement or through fairly regular meetings and they're diaried in. Agendas are shared, not always completely. There's sometimes some conflict. And GMP's City Centre team has worked over the last year with Manchester City Council to foster a far closer working relationship. We've moved very much away from the pick-up-the-phone relationship to one where the City Centre neighbourhood policing team and Manchester City Council's neighbourhood delivery team are actually co-located in their entirety at Lucas Street Police Station. That is a really significant step change, and as I say, when we talk about going on the extra level with partnerships, that's what I'm talking about. The last year has brought some challenges though, and bringing the two teams together with two cultures has been quite a challenge in a number of ways. We've had to ensure, for a start off, the bottom right of the picture there, that we've created an open office space where we're running a hot desk situation. And hot desk has been a challenge in itself. Hot desk doesn't mean your family photos and the pot plants and you take root, and there's been a fair degree of encouragement put in place to make sure that the GMP and MCC staff are actually engaging and starting to merge into one team. We've managed at very low cost, just a nominal cost, to give every computer in that open office space access to GMP and MCC systems through a number of internet links, but it's been very low cost, and it's meant that we can just promote that hot desk situation. We can make sure that MCC staff are sat next to GMP staff, or perhaps sat next to a different place they weren't sat next to the day before. And the generating of more informal relationships within the office has meant that we've been able to make a lot of our previously formal meeting arrangements redundant. Police staff and managers are working and developing stronger relationships with their MCC colleagues. You'll see on the top right photo there that the Chief Inspector from the City, Gareth Parkin, holding a meeting with Angela Whitehead. That wasn't actually a meeting, that happens every day. You just stick your head down the door and talk something through. But a huge step forward to be sharing the same accommodation. I don't think he's here yet, but I would actually point out Gareth is distraught with that photograph, and I've promised him it was going to go on the big screen. So those that don't know Gareth, when we get together upstairs after this, just let him know that you've seen the photo, and that's exactly how it looks, if you would please. So we'll go down like a level. The policing zones, the beat map is on the left there with some colour coding of where our crime hotspots are. GMP was working within our beats to 6 zones. Manchester City Council was working to 4. That just was never going to work. So part of the challenge has been bringing us together to work on the same 4 zones within the city and start to talk the same language. And because we're in the same building, we've now got GMP and MCC staff sharing daily briefings. Issues that might raise questions of harm, opportunity and threat are tasked out there and then every day, rather than waiting for the weekly Thursday afternoon meeting that we used to wait for. So in terms of real time, we're getting actions put together a lot quicker for the benefit of those who are using the city centre. And as a joint team, we're engaging with other key players in the city. Groups such as City Go, who represent businesses, retailers and visitors, and NCP, who actually manage 25 of the 42 city centre car parks, and also the CCTV system. In terms of the benefits to GMP and MCC, my colleague Angela Whitehead for the MCC, Neighbourhood Delivery Manager for the city, she's been quoted as saying that the system ensures less and less division between agencies. We're all working together for a better city centre, we're saving time, and we're actually becoming better at what we do. And it's quite notable actually, from my role popping in and out of the main office as it were, there's a real honesty developing between the members of what were previously 2 camps, and actually starting to see some really healthy banter in the office as well. Nothing inappropriate, but just an indicator that there's a buzz developing on the team and people are really starting to engage informally. So we really are now starting to manage the risks that come with the city centre together. The Partnership Plus arrangement in the city has, in its first year, registered some really significant results in delivering the safer city centre. Now, we had a blindingly good year last year, and we weren't sure how we were going to meet that this year, but this year we're already seeing 32 less victims of crime every week in the city in comparison to last year, and as I say, we thought that was a good year. So that in itself has meant fewer victims of theft, of violence, of robbery, of auto crime. Notably, I think the auto crime position is one which is a great example to highlight the strength of the new team. I'll just take a few minutes to work through that now, as an example. We have 42 major car parks in the city, 25 of them are NCP managed, and we have 50,000 visiting motorists every day, with the attractions that a bright lights of the big city brings. Sadly, the bright lights also attract offenders. They also attract homeless and beggars, and that serves to create a difficult environment for reducing crime and building confidence. GMP and MCC have collaborated heavily with the car park management companies this year, and we've brought the CCTV management company closer into our combined efforts as well. With CityCo support, we've formally shared information and data on a daily basis with NCP on crime patterns, on suspects. The relationship's been absolutely crucial in helping us all to build a better understanding of the factors contributing to car park auto crime. And there's some really small factors involved there, like whether a certain fire escape is being secured at the right time of day. Not just those that might be sleeping rough on the stairwells. But we've coordinated our activities between the three groups. We've started to deploy as one team. And we've started with, for example, homeless sweeps from 7 o'clock in the morning, NCP staff doing their own crime prevention patrols at the right time of day, making sure the equipment is right, the doors and the barriers are working properly. And we've also come to recognise, actually as a group, a bit of a nightmare for some of the cops, I've got to admit, we've come to recognise that the impact of auto crime on the victims, it's a crime perhaps who have been a little bit dismissive of the impact on victims over the years, more so than would have been with burglary or crimes of violence. And certainly I think you could argue that the courts have had a similar view on some of the sentences that have done that with auto crime. So we've started to recognise the alarm and distress that auto crime can create. The daily data sharing also led to an intelligence-related case against a number of prolific offenders who we were quite sure who was committing the crime but couldn't have the evidence to satisfy a court. And on the right-hand side of the screen there you'll see just a snapshot of a timeline document we put together. That timeline tracks the movement of one key individual around a number of city centre car parks. The actual document's actually pages and pages long in length. It tracks the individual through the city, to his hostel accommodation, through what clothing he's wearing, who he's associating with, and putting together such a document is actually quite a laborious task. Hours and hours trawling through CCTV systems, and very much a joint effort between MCC, NCP and Greater Manchester Police. The benefits of timeline are huge. We probably had evidence to charge this particular offender with 2 crimes. 2 auto crime offences wouldn't necessarily have got the greatest penalty in the world of court, and probably better back out in the city post-haste really, carrying on regardless. But this timeline enabled us to sit down with the Crime Prosecution Service and satisfy them that 20 charges were appropriate against the one male, despite us having the firm evidence of 2. It also encouraged the male, after he'd had legal advice, to actually plead guilty to all 20. Now that sounds great. He's still got a custodial sentence of about 30 weeks, which isn't the longest time in the world, might not be life-changing for him. But the fact that we were starting to recognise the alarm and distress caused to the victims of auto crime and document it meant that we worked with Manchester City Council to go to courts and get a criminal antisocial behaviour order secured against the individual when he left prison. The result is that he comes out of prison shortly and he's banned from city centre car parks for the next 10 years. Really significant result, and that's the kind of result that this partnership, the Partnership Plus set has been putting together at Greater Manchester. Now the lady on the left of the photo there is actually not a police employee, that's Emma Bunting, and she's an employee of NCP. That photo is Emma receiving her Divisional Commander's Award for her work in developing the timeline. This is really a team game, and we've moved on massively from perhaps a situation where cops were giving themselves a little pat on the back for doing a great job. This is all about us doing it together to make the city safer. Notably, the joint activity has just in 1 year secured 18 crossbows in the city centre. We've got some prolific offenders now who are banned from the city centre for life, banned from car parks for life, banned from the city for 5 years, and a range of categories in between. The bottom line, 50,000 motorists a day visit our city centre, and of the 50,000 a day, on average we're seeing less than 2 become a victim of auto crime. That's a massive step forward, and it's really significant for a city of this size. So much so that our colleagues in Birmingham who do dispute this second city status are actually coming to us to see how we've gone about achieving that sort of success, which is great. Sitting within the joint GMP and MCC City Centre team is a member of MCC's Anti-Social Behaviour Action Team, Lisa Jones. Lisa, through the joint team, has developed some really strong working relationships with the neighbourhood beat officers, with PCSOs. If you drop into the office on any day, you could actually see Lisa sat giving support and advice and guidance on the management of some key offenders. Lisa's actually very modest about what she does, and she's very reluctant about talking to the camera, but we've had to work hard to protect her from her own enthusiasm, forget the job done, to be honest, and her own workload. But just a few seconds here of Lisa giving her thoughts as to how the joint team has impacted on her.
Hiya, I'm Lisa Jones. I'm the ASB Case Manager for the Citizen Team. This has been a new role for me with the Citizen Team. We started here in about January this year. Since then, I've been doing a lot more work in terms of ASBOs and criminal and social behaviour awareness. Since starting, the Citizen Team is successful in obtaining 6 ASBOs, 2 ASBOs, and there are also 7 more applications submitted to the CPS. Most of them are also considering 5 more applications, so we've been quite busy here in the City Centre.
And bear in mind that was filmed just 2 months ago, and now up to 18 CRASBOs. You can see the kind of volume of work that the partnership is getting through. Now, the auto crime issue is fine. It's mainly a daytime issue. We talked about up to 100,000 people visiting the city at night time as well. The 2 maps there illustrate just how much of a challenge we're now presented with as a partnership in terms of the nighttime economy. On the left there, from 2005, we had about 311 late night licences. The figures at the end of last year showed over 600 late night licences in the city centre. And it's genuinely a 24-hour city now. Most of us, if we're honest, will probably remember growing up seeing the city centre getting pretty much closed at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. But tumbleweed blowing through by 4 o'clock, but really not many people about. Those days have gone. Friday and Saturday now in the city centre, it's still going large and loud at 6 o'clock in the morning and 7 o'clock in the morning. Gives us a real challenge. Those that would recognise the old City Safe brand that was talked about in Manchester City Centre, well, the City Safe funding actually went 2 years ago. So in this age of austerity, with the cuts and the establishment issues that have been well documented in the media, how do we go about meeting the challenge of managing the nighttime economy? Well, to support the nighttime economy and keep the city centre safe overnight, we've put together Operation Custodian. And through Custodian, as a partnership, we've applied 2 years of footfall data, crime data, demand profiles. We've risk assessed every single night of the year in the same way that we would a football match. And those that aren't familiar, we risk assess our football matches as category A, B or C, depending on the risk, and they are stacked proportionately. So we've done that every night of the year with the nighttime economy. And that's to make sure that we've got the right people on duty at the right time, just to make the city safe. Now, the approach has seen a reduction in victims of violence across the wider city centre, which is great. But the joint team, by GMP and MCC, has been increasingly frustrated recently by the lack of movement in the famous gay village area. And that's an area that often attracts intoxicated people looking to continue drinking at 5, 6, 7 o'clock in the morning when other hours have begun to close down. As a result, to the bottom of your screen there, you can see just the top tip of our Village Crime Reduction Action Plan. We've signed up on a joint action plan now to tackle the village as a key area for us in Manchester City Centre. It's not just a police issue either. A lot of the nighttime economy policing in recent years has been pretty much boots on ground in enforcement. Well, there is a licensing enforcement manual through this, as you would expect, but there's also taxi licensing. We're putting road closures in place, we're piloting some pedestrianisation, the lighting's being improved, the CCTV's being reviewed. This is all hands to the pump in terms of what can we do to make the village a safer place on Friday and Saturday night. The project's going to continue, it's just in its infancy. But the joint team is not just looking at the daytime issues, we really are very conscious of the need to support the nighttime, and Partnership Plus will continue to do that. The reduction figures on the left of your screen you can see there are fine, but I accept numbers are a bit cold. The team's focus is very much around the victim, and I'm reluctant to use numbers, although people always have an interest in them. What they do show is that the Partnership Plus ethos in the city centre is having an impact. We followed a great year last year, with an even better year this year. Those reduction figures are against last year's figures. So the reality is we've absolutely been on fire this year. What we do know, at the bottom line, there are fewer and fewer victims of crime in Manchester City Centre. This city is genuinely a safer place in which to work, live or visit. We also know that the GMP City Centre Twitter account is also recognised as the most influential in the GMP area, and public confidence ratings in what we're doing are around the 90% mark. So we think it's a success. I already hinted earlier at the fact perhaps that we've had a history of patting ourselves on the back saying great job, well done. But we as a team with MCC believe this is a success. And it's nice now to get some independent and objective confirmation of that. So we were delighted, on the right of your screen there, that the Police Professional magazine, which is a national journal for the police profession, published a feature article on our Partnership Plus arrangement in their December 2012 edition. The article noted not only the reduction in crime, but it really emphasised the strength of truly working together and the team's focus on the victim and not just the numbers that are behind the victims. The article actually surmised that in a world of dwindling finances, these two organisations may have just found a way to maintain their levels of service well into the future, which is a nice way for us to sum it up. But I think the team ethos is probably best summed up by the slide there. I think people who aren't familiar with basketball know the name Michael Jordan. He was an absolute genius of the basketball court, one-man team, there was nothing that guy couldn't do. Yet when he was in college, he was dropped at one point, and that quote there is from his basketball coach. Michael, if you can't pass, you can't play. And that pretty much sums up where we're at with Biblical Street at the moment. This very much is jointly a GMP, MCC arrangement aimed at making the city a safer place. And if any of us can't pass, then we can't play. Thank you.